Guys, for real, y'all need to chill. Ever since the pages have started leaking from this character encyclopedia, Reddit and Twitter, why do we say Reddit but not Fritter? God, I want to fritter right now. Reddit and Fritter has been enraged on all the terrible inaccuracies in this book and how we can't use this book because it's so wildly inconsistent and just not useful at all. I'm sorry, but that's not the case. Look, Slices, put on your aprons, because we're going to go through every single inconsistency I can find in this book, but then we'll talk about the really juicy details and lore that we actually get from reading it, things that it does confirm and hints that it gives us. And I think this book can actually be a super useful refresher and a starting point for a lot of people just getting into the lore in 2023, which is not an easy task. First, let's gather our ingredients. Now, I did go through this book and find every single error that I could, and I went online to make sure that I didn't miss anything. But I do want to clear the air here. Some of the things that I'm going to mention are just editing mistakes. Literally, a sentence was typed in wrong or missing grammar or something like that. Super minor things that get lost in the translation of writing a 200+ page book on funny bear animatronics. But there's a couple lore points that some people online have been calling mistakes. I'm going to point them out. But stick with me, we have to consider the possibility that if something in this book directly contradicts lore from a previous game, it could be a retcon. I know, we hate the word retcon, I hate the word retcon, but there is a chance that some of these points might be trying to do that. It's not like FNAF has never retconned something in the past. One of the highest points of the entire franchise, I think so at least, is Henry's speech in FNAF 6. It's one of the best story moments we got in this entire game series. One of the only direct story moments, but still, it's an amazing speech. And it retcons FNAF 2. Henry pretty directly states that this is his daughter in this minigame, but in the FNAF 2 minigame, it's called Save Him. This was originally a boy, but come FNAF 6, it was Henry's daughter. That's a retcon, so just keep it in the back of your mind that some of these lore mistakes could be purposeful retcons. It's something to consider at least. First error / retcon is actually on page 2. Well, that's what people have been saying, but I think there's a misreading here. The last location on the opening section reads, "Finally, there's the bedroom, where a child is haunted by terrible memories of a visit to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in Five Nights at Freddy's 4. A lot of people have come out to say that this is inaccurate, because the crying child has terrible memories of Fredbear's Family Diner. That, and it's likely that in FNAF 4 we're playing as Michael Afton, not the crying child. I'll get to that second point later on, but I want to point out that if we're assuming the crying child is the player in FNAF 4, the nightmares would be of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica, as far as we know, are not at Fredbear's Family Diner. If the nightmares were solely based around Fredbear's Family Diner, we would only be being chased by a nightmare Fredbear and a nightmare Spring Bonnie, something that doesn't exist. Moving on, it seems that Golden Freddy appearing in Sister Location could be an error. However, one of the difficulty settings in Custom Night is listed as Golden Freddy, so there is a chance that this is what it's referring to. It's hard to say. One of my biggest critiques of this book actually is I wish they were more upfront about what counts as a game appearance, because sometimes something will just appear on one poster in one screenshot, and suddenly that means that animatronic was in that game, so it gets a little confusing on what exactly constitutes a game appearance. I think it would have been better if they separated it into game appearance and game cameo. But with this book, this is what we have. Next error, it says that Bon Bon was in FNAF 3. I looked at every camera, that's fair, I cannot see Bon Bon anywhere in here. Unless it's trying to say that any Bonnie hand puppet is a Bon Bon, but even then I couldn't find one of those either, so if you find one, let me know. Weirdly though, it mentions that Bon Bon is female. That's fine, I assumed Bon Bon was male, but I could have been wrong there. The error comes in that it then immediately says Bonette is the first female version of Bonnie introduced in the games. Technically, they're introduced in the same game and Bon Bon is introduced first. So if Bon Bon is a girl, Bon Bon would be the first female Bonnie variant. It's a very technical error, but it is an error nonetheless. This next one technically isn't an error, but what the hell is this Toy Chica render? This is terrifying. The beak is the wrong color and the teeth just look wrong. I don't know. Something went wrong here, and frankly, it's more terrifying than any render I've ever seen of Toy Chica. This next one is an editing error, and it's wrong, but it's funny. I'm just gonna read this out entirely. On Phantom Foxy's page, we have, he's in a worse state than Withered Foxy, as his hook hand has gone astray. And in FNAF 3, his hook hand has gone astray. So don't get too excited or anything. It's not some huge confirmation or retcon, but I think his hook hand has gone astray. It's hard to tell, but definitely in FNAF 3, Phantom Foxy's hook hand has gone astray. This next one's an odd one. On Endo01's page, one of the 3 photos they use is actually of Endo02, which is even weirder considering the very next page is all about Endo02, so they could have just saved it for that one. Now, this is a big one that I've seen a lot of people mention. The book only ever refers to Mangle as he. Now, there's been Now, so far in the franchise, Mangle has always been referred to with he and she pronouns, pretty much switching it up every time they've been mentioned. However, it is important to note 2 things. 1. In FNAF 2, Mangle is only ever referred to as he, as Mangle is just a new version of Foxy. But on the custom night, Mangle is included in Ladies' Night. That's probably where this whole thing came from. However, if Mangle's proper pronouns are he and she, it's not technically wrong to only refer to Mangle with masculine pronouns. After all, I'm non-binary. I go by any all pronouns. I don't really care. But a lot of people default to using he, him for me because, I mean, I present very masculine, I have a deep voice, I get it. But that doesn't change the fact that I do go by all pronouns. You know what I mean? It's not technically saying that Mangle only goes by he, him, it's just that this book only refers to Mangle with he, him. This next one's a bit of an editing fix. On Old Man Consequences page, it does mention that he's in FNAF World, but under game appearances, it only lists him under Ultimate Custom Night. This is a weird one, definitely put it in there, but it could also be a side effect by the fact that none of the FNAF World only characters have their own page here. Frankly, the book really doesn't delve that much into FNAF World. Granted, I understand there's a lot of really weird one-off characters that would fill this book up like crazy, but like, there's like 40 pages of FNAF AR skins. We could swap those with FNAF World and be way better for it. I'm just saying. Regardless, it should mention FNAF World in the Old Man Consequences game appearances. Alright, this is a big one. The book directly states, and I quote, "The crying child is the main character in Five Nights at Freddy's 4. He's terrorized by the nightmare animatronics in his bedroom, but his real story is told in the end of night minigames." Again, I agree with you guys here. I think Michael Afton is the protagonist of FNAF 4. After all, we see Michael draw the Nightmare Fredbear animatronic in the security logbook, and in the game itself, the animatronics mirror exactly what they do to Michael in FNAF 1, and we hear the FNAF 1 phone call. I'll admit, I don't have a good answer here. Either this is a pretty big mistake, or very possibly, this might be a very big retcon. It's hard to tell, don't take my word as gospel, but it's one of those 2 things. Or we've been theorizing about FNAF 4 completely wrong, because to be fair, we don't have a lot of confirmations in this game, so the word retcon is kind of strong. This next one isn't necessarily an error, but it's more of a nitpick. For Charlotte Emily's page, they exclusively use pictures of Charlotte Emily from the books, but the text nearly exclusively is talking about Charlotte from the games. So really, we should have gotten some new art like we did for the crying child, talking about Charlotte Emily from the games. More of a nitpick, less of an error. Although I've been noticing people mention this last sentence in the Charlotte Emily section as an error. Quote, "An alternate version of Charlotte who survived childhood appears in the novels." I've seen a lot of people mad at this because, spoilers, Charlotte still dies in the novels. Henry Emily then creates several differently aged Charlotte Emily robots so he can simulate her growing up throughout the years. So the line is wrong to say she survived, but I think this is another misread. I don't think this line is wrong. I think it's just being misinterpreted. Read it again. "An alternate version of Charlotte who survived childhood appears in the novels." This isn't saying that in the novels, Charlotte survived childhood. This is saying specifically an alternate version of Charlotte who survived childhood. Pause, appears in the novels. An alternate version of Charlotte. How else would you describe, besides directly stating the exact plot of the book, a robotic version of Charlotte? It's not saying that the alternate book version of Charlotte survives childhood. This is stating that in the books, there are alternate versions of Charlotte, the robots, that are made to have survived childhood. That's what Charlotte Emily in the books is. An alternate what-if Charlotte that had survived childhood. It's very tricky language, but this isn't an error. It's just being misread for vague language. That might do it. I mean, I need a few more parts. I need to find some batteries back here or something, but The phone might be dead, but the parts in here with the other things I've found lying around, I think I have a way to communicate out of here, or at least something to help me navigate. I just need some batteries. A sponsored. Okay, maybe these guys will have it. Today's video is brought to you by HelloFresh. Look, if you're anything like me, you like to make nice meals, but you don't have a lot of time and you don't know where to start. With HelloFresh, you'll get pre-portioned, fresh ingredients and seasonal recipes right to your door. HelloFresh can make a pro out of a newbie, and it makes home cooking fun and affordable. The meals that HelloFresh presents are delicious and easy. You can get meals for any type of eater, from vegetarian to meat lovers. Not too long ago, me and my wife made the sheet pan onion crunch Dijon chicken. It blew my mind. It made me like asparagus, and I don't like asparagus. And even if you don't have a lot of time to be in the kitchen, HelloFresh has got you covered with their fast and fresh menu. Their latest line of meals that offer robust flavors, all within 15 minutes of cook time. It's honestly a game changer, a great way to impress people if you're having guests, but more than anything, it's a great way to save money, save the planet, and introduce yourself to some meals you've never even thought about before. To try HelloFresh, check the link in the description for a special limited time discount and free shipping. And go and try HelloFresh today. I promise you, for a few months now, I've been having HelloFresh and it is delicious every time, without a doubt. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Water. It's not batteries, but I sure need it. All right, couple batteries. Then we take 2. Okay, so that's every single thing I could find and stuff that was pointed out online that I missed that could be considered an error or an inconsistency. The rest of this book is pretty solid and really useful. An incredibly important part of that fact is what it chooses to say. Keep in mind that each character gets at most 2 pages, most of them getting 1. So anything that's said in this book is probably important, or at least any detail that was left in here was left on purpose. Well, what do they point out? Well, on Shadow Freddy's page, it said, will he turn out to be a crucial character in the ongoing mythology of Five Nights at Freddy's? Maybe, maybe not. Time will tell. This is like the only time in the entire book that there's time taken out of a character's page to say, is this person important? Maybe, wink. So this makes me feel like Shadow Freddy is going to be important, possibly soon. After all, RxQ got a leading role in FNAF AR recently, and Shadow Freddy was kind of left out of that. So we have room for Shadow Freddy in any upcoming projects for FNAF. Speaking of RxQ, the page for it states that it's rumored to be made out of Dark Remnant. Now, it says it's rumored, so this isn't a confirmation, but it is a confirmation that Dark Remnant exists in the games, which would conceivably be an equivalent from Agony in the books. The next thing mentioned is actually something that gets pointed out to me a lot in the comments and recently on the Ritos subreddit. That being that Phantom Chica in FNAF 3 is specifically the FNAF 1 model of Chica. Now, Phantom Foxy and Phantom Freddy are the FNAF 2 models, but Phantom Chica is FNAF 1, and it's specifically pointed out, which turns this detail from like a fun Easter egg that maybe Scott lost the model from FNAF 2 and had to use the FNAF 1 model, and suddenly makes it, hey, this is important. Look into why this would be. Another interesting point is it goes into detail on exactly what the Fun Times would do to kidnap a child, each of their roles in this almost like kid heist. It's honestly one of the scarier things presented in a FNAF media that I've seen in a while. The idea that these highly advanced, made to be friendly and approachable animatronics have specific and effective methods of kidnapping children, down to mimicking parents' voices, is chilling to think about. It calls on some of my favorite SCPs. Also, shout out Yarg Foxy. This is goddamn adorable and I want 10 of them. Seriously, Funko, U2s, I don't care. Somebody make Yarg Foxy real. I need this in my life. Listen, I've got a P.O. box, send me Yarg Foxy, please. I swear to God, I'll do 20 ads for you. I don't care, I want Yarg Foxy. An interesting thing to note is us receiving official names for these creatures from the FNAF 3 minigames, Shadow Puppet and Shadow Balloon Boy. Not only are these pointed out as important and nameable characters, but they share a naming convention with Shadow Freddy, which seems really important and makes me look at these characters in a new light because I kind of just overlooked them. I assumed it was just some weird glitch effect, but this book seems to grab you by the shoulders and say, hey, why are they here? which is a good question. Oh, this is a super weird one that stuck out to me. On Dee Dee's page, the sentence is, she first appeared as an NPC in FNAF World, an online RPG version of Five Nights at Freddy's that has since been taken offline. A couple things. This was never an online game. And 2, it's still online. You can download it off GameJolt. So either this is like an error, or maybe it's saying that FNAF World was an in-universe game that was an online game that got taken down. But why would it say it in character? This book has been very fourth wall the whole time. It's strange, but it's worth noting. Glitch Trap's page has a really big lore point that I haven't seen many people talk about yet. Now, this could just come down to vague language, but I think it's important to note that the first sentence on Glitch Trap's page is, quote, "This mascot only exists digitally." Now, like I said, this could just be saying that Glitch Trap himself only exists digitally, which is true, but it says mascot, which makes me think that this entire costume is a digital-only model, which would mean that this was never a real suit used by William Afton, which feels strange because everyone, myself included, kind of assumed this was either what was over the Spring Bonnie suit in-game or a handmade suit before the Springlock suits were invented. They could have even been the suit mentioned in FNAF 3 when they said less relevant suits were used in the meantime immediately after the Springlock suits. It's really hard to tell, but this sentence could be implying that this model is completely original, which would be weird, so it's worth noting. Next, it's worth pointing out that they really are driving home that a lot of human-looking animatronics were being made and tested in the sister location bunker. MatPat on GT Live went into this on his video on the book and really talked about how this supports the idea that the sister location bunker was made to start making either Elizabeth bots or Charlie bots like FNAF's Theory, so it's definitely worth looking into. A couple other things mentioned by MatPat was the fact that it points out you probably shouldn't build over a haunted pizza place, implying that the actual location itself might be haunted in a more traditionally ghost-like story, and also that the mediocre melodies are pointed out to have been made in an attempt to probably avoid copyright. Anyways, moving on. There's a whole section in Montgomery Gator's spread that talks about the Bonnie mystery, talking about how Bonnie was likely destroyed by Monty. Now, we know this from the games, but it's interesting that they took a whole paragraph to point that out, which leads me to believe it's going to be very important for some reason. And we should keep in mind that Montgomery Gator probably destroyed Bonnie, whether under the influence of Burntrap's virus or possibly directly commanded to by Vanny. Hey, speaking of Vanny, y'all doubted me. They're the same person. Suck it. Let's go. Anyway, I also noticed it was important that on William Afton's page, it mentions that the dialogue at the beginning of Sister Location is between Willie and a member of the Fazbear Entertainment board, which is really nice that we have confirmation on who William Afton is speaking to in that cutscene. Sticking with Afton, let's move on to Burntrap and the Blob. First off, it mentions that these are not the canon names for them, which honestly, thank goodness, I'm so tired of blank trap, and the Blob isn't that good of a name. I preferred my original name, The Amalgam, and I might stick with that. Although if William Afton took control of it, I'll probably go with just BKZ's suggestion of Billy Blob. Regardless, also important on Burntrap's page, it mentions that, quote, the Spring Bonnie suit has by this time become even more tattered and degraded. So it feels pretty solid as to deconfirm that Glamrock Bonnie's exoskeleton was used to repair Burntrap. It seems to be stating that Burntrap is still just the Spring Bonnie suit, which then leads me to the question, why did they axe Bonnie? Now we don't really have a reason for it. On the Crying Child's page, it specifies that idea again, that he saw something to make him afraid, and really emphasizes that, which makes me again wonder, what the hell did he see? And also, it slightly retcons the very ending of those minigames. Maybe not retcons, but corrects is a better word. A lot of theorists, myself included, got tripped up where at the very last line, I will put you back together, is in a slightly different font color. And font color had been consistent up until that point in those minigames, so that felt important. But the book says that the Fredbear plush directly says, quote, you're broken, we are still your friends, I will put you back together. So it seems to be saying that this text color change isn't actually important. Finally, in Elizabeth Afton's section, we get this quote: "Michael was following his father's instructions when he went down to Circus Baby's entertainment and rental." This isn't too notable on its own, we know this, but it is the only time in the entire book that they mention Michael Afton. Because for as many characters that are in this encyclopedia, 3 incredibly important characters are nowhere to be found: Cassidy, Fredbear, and Michael Afton. For Cassidy, granted, most of the information we have is speculation, so if they tried to give us any information on Cassidy, it would be a huge confirmation, probably too big for the health of the theorizing community, because either they would deconfirm a hell of a lot of stuff, or confirm things that some fans don't want to care about. I don't know why Fredbear is absent here though. Maybe they don't want to specify what the actual design is, but we see it in Ultimate Custom Night, so frankly I don't know why Fredbear is missing. But I do know why Michael Afton isn't here. And no, sorry Matt, I don't think it's because he's not an Afton. I think Michael is an Afton. I think he's left out because of the data file. Every single character has a data file at the beginning of their section. It says their name, what they are, the games they appear in, and the novels they appear in. I think Michael was specifically omitted from this book because of the game appearance line. Because outside of Sister Location, we technically don't have confirmation that Michael Afton is the protagonist of any game. So any game they list him being the protagonist of would be a massive confirmation or deconfirmation. It would shake up the entire theorizing landscape permanently. And I don't know if Scott wanted such a massive lore dump to be in this book, especially as a footnote. That feels so important that that might need to come from the games itself. Really, it's a damned if they do, damned if they don't kind of situation. If they don't include Michael Afton, it's like making a Mario encyclopedia and not including Mario. But if they do include Michael Afton, it changes everything permanently. So they probably just erred on the side of caution and left him out, which I respect. All in all, this book is useful. Not only is it useful, but it gives us some pretty big confirmations, and it also gives us some hints on where to look that I know I'm going to be looking into. Things like, what did Gregory do before Security Breach? Which, if you want answers for that, I go into in this video. But let me know what you think. Are you skipping this one, or like me, do you think this is a valuable piece of lore that you can use to at least guide where you're looking, even with the errors? After all, his hook hand did go astray. For now, a huge thank you to the best patrons, the Toasted Slices, Emberisk, Zenith, Charlie Bean, Lovey Puppy, Stormachow, Just BKZ, Chickpea, Lola Fembo, The Viper 26, Lehan, James Reiner, Emily De La Sierra, Loose Harriet, Nika, Snowblossom, Givo, Ion GD, Raven Eris, Angel, Dionysus, and Wesley Harden. And until next time, as always, stay toasty, Slices.